Before we begin, I want to give a heartfelt shout out to the members of our committee who made this possible tonight. A special thank you to Bob Ferreira, my co-moderator for the evening. Also to Stella Coe, an invaluable committee member who's helping on the floor tonight, alongside our dear Ellen Ballard, our chair emeritus. And a huge thank you to our vice chair, Sam Fieldman, who has provided his tech expertise and his steady support. This forum is being streamed live on ActonTV and will be available for later viewing as well. I also want to extend our deepest thanks to the distinguished panelists who have taken the time to be with us tonight. Eloa Saladon, immigration attorney at Saladon Law. Sarang Shekhawat, he's the chief of staff of MIRA, Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. Chief Jim Cogan, Acton Police Department. Dalida Roche, executive director at Neighbor to Neighbor. She joins us tonight as a representative from Lucé. Your expertise and ongoing commitment to supporting immigrant communities is truly appreciated. Thank you. As we prepared for tonight's discussion, we have received overwhelmingly more than 40 thoughtful questions through our online registration. It's truly inspiring to see such engagement. We have grouped similar questions together so we can cover as much ground as possible. If you didn't get a chance to submit a question earlier, no worries, Stella and Ellen are circulating with index cards. If something comes to mind during the forum, please write it down and pass it back. We'll do our best to include as many questions as time allows. Before we turn to our panelists, I want to take a moment to speak from heart about something weighing heavily on many of us. Over the past few weeks, we have witnessed a disturbing increase in ICE raids across the state and the country. Tragically, just 10 days ago, right here in Acton, ICE made arrests that shook our community. In response, residents sprang into action. In under 24 hours, a peaceful rally was organized right outside the town hall here, where hundreds gathered to stand in solidarity with our immigrant neighbors. That moment sent a powerful message. As a community, we care. We care deeply about our immigrant families, families who contribute so much to our economy, our schools, our culture, and the very fabric of life here in Acton. That rally and your presence here tonight speaks to our shared commitment to compassion, justice, and action. Because tonight isn't just about policy, it's about people. It's about empowering our neighbors with knowledge, support, and a sense of belonging. Thank you again for being here. We'll begin this evening with opening remarks from our panelists. Each of them will speak for about 5 to 7 minutes. After that, we will move on to questions, both those submitted in advance and those from the floor. I was going to start with Representative Senna, so I'm going to give him a few more minutes, but since he's not here, we'll move on to Attorney Eloa Saladon. She's the founder and principal attorney at Saladon Law, a boutique immigration law firm based in Massachusetts. A native of Brazil and the daughter of Chilean immigrants, she brings a deeply personal understanding to the immigration experience. She is fluent in English, Portuguese, Spanish, and has spent 2 decades advocating for the rights of immigrants with compassion and determination. She holds a Bachelor's of Science in Liberal Studies from Assumption College, Juris Doctor from Massachusetts School of Law. Throughout her career, she has worked with both nonprofit organizations and private entities, earning the trust of a community through impactful legal work, including a landmark First Circuit case affirming due process and the right to counsel. Attorney Saladon represents individuals and clients from diverse backgrounds, helping them navigate the complexities of immigration law. Her commitment to justice extends beyond the courtroom. She volunteers with the PAIR project, delivers know your rights presentations and actively participates in organizations such as the American Immigration Lawyers Association and the Boston Bar Association Immigration Law Committee. Recognized widely for her leadership, she has had numerous honors, including Massachusetts Rising Star, Super Lawyers, this is quite a long list, 2020 Top Attorney, and Outstanding Young Women Lawyers. So she's also given interviews on 60 Minutes. She's been on WPR, NPR, Boston Globe, and numerous other places. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you. And I shouldn't have sent her the list of awards. Now I'm embarrassed.
No, it's impressive.
God, but thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the time here because we're all here for one purpose, I believe, is to unite and to be informed. As you guys all know, knowledge is power, and if we can come together and join in that power, I think we can make a lot more that I know most of you are doing, that I hear Acton is a very pro-immigrant for most part, and you guys have obviously been very supportive. And I'm so happy Representative Santa's here. We missed you. Likewise, likewise. So I have a presentation here, and I'd like to start with our immigration system because often folks think immigration is the court, immigration is the ICE agent, immigration is everything, right? But do note that the court system is not part of the ICE agents. They're part of the Department of Justice. It's somewhat of an administrative body. It's funny because I have judges in court, like in Chelmsford, Boston, that were my colleagues, attorneys, and then they apply to become a judge, and it's kind of funny to see them in that position, which is great, but so when you think of ICE, you should think of them as one entity that's under this umbrella, and right on top, we have the Department of Homeland Security. So you probably heard of ICE, Department of Homeland Security officers, but Department of Homeland Security, they have the ICE, they have the CBP, and CBP are the kind of like the border patrols that you see at the airports. You see them in entries. Our clients that come, with entry without inspection, we call them by foot. They walked from, let's say, Mexico and then enter Texas or Arizona, California. And, the media calls them illegal aliens for most part, but they are folks that entered without inspection. That's the correct legal term. And then we have USCIS. USCIS is the body or the agency that's controlling, the petitions. Let's say if a DACA recipient will apply with USCIS. Folks that are applying for asylum can apply with USCIS. Green card holders, those that are naturalizing, can apply with USCIS. Right. Next, thank you. So I hope this helps and it gives a little bit more. When people come with contact with ICE agents, and because this is really the theme of, tonight's event, ICE agents, I've been dealing with them for many, many years, and I was actually at the ICE Burlington office just a few hours ago, encountered a very interesting situation that I will share later on, but folks wonder, okay, but how do people get in contact with ICE? Over the years, it's always been primarily folks with criminal records, has been really, I would say, the top three. So someone that's driving under the influence, folks that, have gone, I think, for most part, the cases I've had where there's criminal activity would be, domestic violence, family violence. And then you have the other folks, which are the, unfortunate situations are the ones that entered without inspection or have overstayed their visa, so their time to stay. So generally, people get to stay 6 months. And if they don't extend, they become an overstay. So that also would trigger ICE. And how do they find them? Sometimes it's just bad luck. Sometimes they just happen to be around someone who maybe have like a removal order. Let's say someone very common, and that's probably, I'd say, half of the people that are really scared right now and are the folks that entered 20 or 30 years ago, and they entered by foot, were told not to appear at their hearings, immigration court hearings. And so what happened is, because they failed to, not because they didn't want to show up, it's because that was what, was told to them. Do not appear, because if you go, the judge is going to deport you. So I have to tell you, I've talked to people on a weekly basis, consultations, and they have all the same story, like clients from California, Florida, Massachusetts. It's like, I did not appear 20, 30 years ago because they told me if I did, I would be deported right away. Not like today, folks that have entered, they are told to appear, right? And we, as the community attorneys, tell them you must appear because that's the right thing to do, so you don't suffer what we call an absentia order, an absence orders. So that's also another, I would say, maybe 30 to 40% of the folks that are really, in a lot of stress right now, because if you suffer an absentia order, so if you fail to appear, it converts into a removal order. And now that's, for the ICE agents, that's what and I've had an agent say they're considered fugitives. Not necessarily, right? Because they're not criminals. But there is a cure for that. There's a remedy. And what we do is motion to reopen. And we ask the court, depending on the circumstances. We have folks that they have no crimes, right? They have not committed any crimes. They have children here. There are situations where they fear returning, right? Because I've had cases where they've suffered, let's say, sexual abuse as a child, or they were coming and leaving a very violent marriage, relationships, poverty, extreme poverty situations, and then we're, filing an asylum. But to get there, we have to say, it's through a motion, is, I'm so sorry, I failed to appear at my hearing. I was told not to. And there is a group of folks that never had a hearing date. So they failed to appear because and the notice that stated that they would have a hearing, there was never a date. So those are, likely to be reopened. And in that case, we get these cases reopened and we file their relief, whether it be asylum. I don't know if you guys heard of the 10-year law, but the technical term is cancellation of removal. If they fit in the criteria, we apply for a work permit so they can work with authorization. And with that, they get a social security card and they're here with no fear, right? Because now their cases are pending. All right, so now we have, that's great. Other reasons, right? Immigration violations and fraud. It's from all the clients I've had over the years. There's a little, I would say, a very small group of folks. It's happened years ago in Framingham, by the way, where folks were selling like social security cards for new arrivals. And they had no clue that it was illegal or unlawful, right? So if you're coming to a new country, right, someone says, I can give you a social security card and now you get to work legally. Oh, great. Now I keep thinking of myself. Let's say I went to, I had to leave here to go live in Germany, right? I don't speak the language. And someone tells me, I can give you this card here if you want. You just have to pay $200 or whatever the currency is there, and you get to work legally. Now, if you have a family and you're feeding your kids, I'm gonna do it, honestly, right? I'm just gonna be like, great, now I get to work. And so immigration can put that as a fraud. So to overcome that, it's almost impossible, because with immigration, it's first impression always stays. If they have something, and that's been my experience over the years, if you did something, even if it was in a way that you were...
Hello, Could you go a little faster?
Yes. I'm sorry. Then that can become an issue. Yes. Thank you. I'll speak more because I know we have questions. And I saw the questions here are related to the PowerPoint. I apologize. No worries. Thank you.
So sorry, we didn't mean to interrupt you, but, but I'm sure we'll cover most of it with the questions, like you said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Since we have Representative Sana here, so I will go back to you now. He's a state representative for the 37th Middlesex District. Danilo Dan Sena is the first Brazilian immigrant elected to the Massachusetts legislature. Before his election, Dan served as Senator Jamie Eldredge's district director for 6 years, working to protect immigrant rights, ensure healthcare access, and make progress towards racial justice and climate justice. Born in Brazil, Dan arrived in Acton at age 14 with his mother. He worked hard to achieve the American dream. Before graduating from Acton Boxborough Regional High School, Dan began working 2 to 3 jobs at a time to help pay his way through college. He attended Middlesex Community College and the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where he graduated with his Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. After joining Senator Eldredge's office as an intern in 2013, he joined the staff full-time in 2014, working as Senator Eldredge's district director and his liaison on public transportation, outreach to immigrants, improving human services, and planning the senior conference every year. So when Representative Jen Benson stepped down in 2020, a special election was called. Dan entered and was elected as the new state representative. Dan officially took office in July of 2020. He met his wife, Melinda M., a Cambodian refugee at Middlesex Community College. They live in Acton with their 3 young children, Juliana, Leonardo, and Mateo. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Sahana, for that kind and long introduction. I want to thank everyone for coming. The Chief of Acton, Mira Eloa, who's an attorney in Marlborough, based in Marlborough. I want to thank the Acton DTC for organizing this forum. We were planning this maybe 2 or 3 months ago when Trump got elected. We were like, then we got to do something in terms of an immigration forum. And then we had the raid in Acton a couple weeks ago, so that inspired, I think, more people to be here. I have a PowerPoint that is it up? That I'll probably speak for 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll have, hopefully we have some time for questions. Having Eloa here, who's someone who can best answer those questions. But I'm here really to say and to speak at the state level what we can do, what we're doing. I am, yeah, give 30 seconds here to Sahana to put the PowerPoint up. But meanwhile, in the House budget, we were able to secure $5 million for legal defense fund. I know in the Senate, it seems it's not there, but there's a conference, a committee, but eventually there'll be a conference on the both bills, and hopefully that will remain. So those one of the major accomplishments we're able to do this year in the budget. I mean, as what Sahan indicated, I came to Acton in 2001. My mom was a teacher in Brazil, had retired, moved here to start a new life, and as an immigrant to represent this area as an area that is very progressive and really open-minded. Acton has really been a home to me where, you know, when I went to high school, and a very, very supportive system from counselors to teachers, and, you know, as a DACA recipient, and I think was so important for me to be here tonight and speak not only about my story, but what we can do as citizens of this country, and when we see our neighbors being attacked, right? I mean, we are unfortunately in a time where I just a couple of days ago, I got a call from a friend who was working here as an electrician, and he was a passenger in the car. Someone was pulled over, and for speeding, I think, and it was an ICE car who asked for the status of everyone in that car. I think there was probably 3 or 4 of them in that car. I'm not sure the story exactly, but he was now sent to Plymouth, and he was here, you know, someone with no record, someone who was here working, who was in the passenger of a vehicle. So we see more and more of these cases. There are people without any criminal record are being targeted and are being marginalized. Or basically, they want to starting removal proceedings. And I think that's why it's so important that we secure some of those funding to recognize that they need for a legal process, right? That you can't just remove someone that are here without status. The other bill is the Safe Communities Act that Senator Eldridge has introduced in the Senate for many, many years. Now in the House is Representative Souza and Representative Cruz, Mindy Cruz. So I wanted to put some slides of some bills that you could be advocating for my office, Senator Eldridge's office, and also you know, letting your friends and family know about these efforts that we can do at the state level. Certainly it's not gonna solve the problem, but it's gonna address it in sending a message, in a political message as to why this bill is so important. I'm not gonna go into much details about those bills, but the information is there. Sahana, can you go to the next slide? Another bill here, a Dignity Not Deportation Act. I actually met with some folks that are lobbying for this bill. It's very similar to the Safe Communities Act. I think it does a little bit less than the Safe Communities, but it's another bill that can be advocated in the House. Can you go to the next slide, Sahana? Now there's another one, Immigration Legal Defense Act by Rep. Rogers, Mike Moran, Senator Gomez. One more. And the last one, something that I filed after meeting with some residents of Acton who kind of really motivated me to do this bill. It was a late file because we wanted to make sure we had the right language, but something that my office introduced this bill, again, really to guarantee legal due process in the court system. And then, yep, that's something I spoke about. And now here is just a little summary of, for you to have a vision of what my office have received in terms of constituent services. You see unemployment is number 1 issue, but then number 2, insurance, consumer affairs, which that can be a variety of issues. But then it looks like the third main is immigration. So my office has worked with, you know, finding attorneys that could represent some constituents and, you know, sometimes writing letters of support, working with our federal delegation to look at their cases. Sometimes they have a pending cases that has been taking a while, and sometimes we can work with Senator Warren, Senator Markey, or Laura Trohan's office that can help us take a look at their case. And sometimes we can expedite or get the case to continue to move. So that's another area that we can be helpful with. And the next slide. So education, climate change, healthcare. Can you go back to, yep. Housing. So these are very, you know, issues. And I think immigration has recently rise. I mean, it was always there, but I think given the current climate, these are data from, I actually had asked my aide to make sure it was basically from January of this year. That's when the new session started. We started with this new data. I think, who is next, Sahana? I'll refer to the next person. And I want to thank Bob for being here, Bob Ferrara. And I also want to thank everyone for coming. I think this is great turnout.
Thank you, Dan. Our next panelist is Sarang Shekhawat. Sarang Sekavas first joined MIRA in 2018 and served as a policy associate and then as MIRA's federal policy director before becoming the organization's first political director in June 2022. Born in Brockton to recent immigrants from Iran, Sarang began his work in immigrant rights in response to the Bush administration's special registration program shortly after 9/11. Sarang received his JD from Brooklyn Law School in 2005 and his MA in International Relations from Boston University in 2004 and a BA from Tufts. Sarang previously served as MIRA's political director before transitioning into MIRA's chief of staff in 2023. Welcome, Sarang. Thank you for being here.
Thanks. Sorry, that look on my face was because I didn't realize it was 2023 that I became chief of staff. Time flies. So first off, thanks everyone, and thanks especially to Rep. Sena for inviting me to this. Thank you all for coming here today. I'm usually the one who depresses people in meetings because I talk about federal immigration policy. I'm going to try not to do that, but I'm not making any promises, frankly. I actually want to build off of something that Aloha said in the very beginning about the fact that the immigration courts are part of Department of Justice, and most other immigration, the enforcement and citizenship functions are all in Department of Homeland Security. That's not how things used to be. It used to be that immigration functions were handled by the Department of Labor. And then eventually they got moved into the Department of Justice. And then after 9/11, with the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, most of those functions, except the immigration courts, were moved into Homeland Security. I think it's really reflective of the way our view of immigration in this country has evolved over the decades. And the way it's gone from here's a labor force to now here's a threat to our national security. And really, when it comes down to it, we are just talking about human beings. And as much though as we look at the things that are happening now under this administration, a lot of the groundwork for this was laid in the Bush administration. As I said in the introduction, I got to start doing this work with special registration. Special registration was a program started under the Bush administration where they basically said, if you're from a Muslim country, you're between the ages of 16 and 65, and you're male, you've got to come register with the federal government. Numbers nationally were about 80,000 people voluntarily registered. 13,000 were put in deportation proceedings. 0 were ever charged with any terrorism-related activities. And what we're seeing now, though, is the Trump administration trying this again, except they're doing it with everyone. They're saying everyone now has to register with the federal government. And it really is, when you're talking about, well, how do people get into the immigration system? This is one of the ways to do it. Get them to come to you and say, hi, I'm here, come get me. Because that's really what that is. That's really all that is. We are seeing a lot of other pretty horrific things that have come out. I mean, we hear all the time in the news about the enforcement actions. Now, on the one hand, we hear from the administration, oh, we're going after the criminals. They said that during the campaign. They keep saying it now. If that were true, why are they shifting resources from criminal law enforcement to civil law enforcement? They're doing this all over the place across various departments. They're saying, no, we don't care about crime. We want you to look at immigration. Other things that we're seeing from this administration has been, sorry, just gonna need my glasses here. An expansion of what's called expedited removal, which allows the administration, this is in the statute, Congress passed this. It allows this administration to deport anyone who's been here less than 2 years without a trial. No due process whatsoever. The idea behind it is to say, well, you're coming to the border, we're just gonna turn you away. But this is used all across the country now. It didn't used to be. It used to just be used at the borders. They are cutting funding for legal services. including for unaccompanied minors. This is an administration that expects 2- and 3-year-olds to be representing themselves in immigration court or to be able to afford their own attorneys. Before, the Department of Justice used to provide grants to help out with this. They're not doing that anymore. But one of the biggest things, too, that we're seeing is going to be the funding cuts. It's not just about what we're seeing in the budget bill that's going through Congress right now. I'll talk about some of that in a second. But they are threatening any jurisdictions that don't cooperate with their immigration enforcement priorities. And they're threatening basically, again, this is across departments. Some of the things that the state has really done to try and stop this, a lot of this has been, I'm sure you've heard about all these lawsuits that are going on. I think it was just Monday that 20 states filed suits against the administration in Rhode Island. They actually filed 2 suits. Same 20 states filed 2 suits, one against Department of Transportation, one against the Department of Homeland Security, both because of these threatened funding cuts, though. Because these agencies are saying, well, if you don't cooperate with our immigration priorities, you're losing all the federal funding that Congress has already said you should get. The approach at the state level, Rep. Sena has already talked about a lot of the bills. The Immigrant Legal Defense Act, I think, is one of the big ones. We had, as you said, the House has put in $5 million in there. We were hoping the Senate was going to put $10 million in there, Bill, but they actually rescinded the amendment that would have put that in there. So now we are going to be relying on conference committee, hoping we can get at least $5 million. There are so many other we are so behind the times on this. There are so many other jurisdictions who did this. New York started doing this because they had a circuit judge, a federal appellate judge, who was sick of seeing these stupid immigration cases coming before him when they should have been taken care of a long time ago. And they would have been taken care of a long time ago if people had legal representation. New York has been doing this for a long time, and they've been doing it long enough to get data on this that says this actually saves us money because you're not splitting up families. You're not forcing people to go on benefits when a breadwinner gets detained or deported. You're not having to deal with all the secondary emotional issues that are happening with families that are split up. So these are programs that actually are this is the financially responsible way to do it, not just the ethical way to do it. I think I'll just end real quick by talking about some of what we're seeing in the congressional bill. If I were gonna tell you everything, we would be here till the sun came back up. So this will be very brief, but just to say that back in '96, we saw them saying, okay, lawful immigrants, we're taking a whole bunch of you off of everything. Healthcare, you're not eligible. SNAP, you're not eligible. Anything that federal government provided, you're not eligible for. And now what they're saying is they're going to trim that down even more. You're here in the US because you're a victim of domestic violence and you're fleeing that. Well, too bad, you're not getting any benefits anymore. You're applying for asylum. Not only are you not eligible for benefits, you've got to pay now. We're going to charge you $1,000 just to apply for asylum, charge you $100 every year your application's pending, charge you $550 every 6 months just so you can have work authorization. These are the kinds of things that we're seeing, not just the administration, but this Congress now as well, trying to do. I'm sure when we get to the questions, we'll talk about some of the things that folks can do in response to this. I'm sorry for depressing everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarang. That was really informative. Next panelist is Jim Cogan, Chief of Police, Acton Police Department. With over 40 years of dedicated service to the Acton Police Department, Jim Cogan currently serves as Chief of Police, a role assumed in December 2022. Prior to becoming Chief, he served as Deputy Chief for 5 years and previously held the ranks of Lieutenant and Sergeant. a long-time Acton resident for the past 30 years. He holds a master's degree in criminal justice from Western New England College and is a proud graduate of the FBI National Academy, class of 2016. Welcome, Chief, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I am a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. I accepted this invitation, and a lot's happened since then. So I expect the level of questions may be a little more difficult, but I promise I will do my best to try to answer whatever is asked of me. So thank you again for allowing me to be part of this. I've learned a lot just sitting here for the last 45 minutes, so it's worthwhile being here, and I appreciate that. I've done a lot of research over the last few weeks and spoken to colleagues from towns around Acton. I think it's something we're facing not just in Acton, but all over the state. And we're trying to figure out what the best response is from a local police department standpoint. We were able to get some experience on the 12th of May when we were called to assist. And actually, I have a meeting tomorrow with the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association, where we're gathering to get more information and guidance. We also have some officials from ICE that will be attending so that we can ask questions and get clarification on some of the questions you and I probably both have. So I just, again, I appreciate being here. I'm going to go through my slides to provide a little bit of information that I have. And I'll start with our mission statement. The Acton Police Department is committed to enhancing the quality of life for all in Acton, particularly the vulnerable, by working collaboratively with the community to enforce laws, maintain peace, and provide social services. We are dedicated to protecting the lives and property of everyone through compassionate, professional, and impartial police services. I want to say that anyone who needs assistance from the Acton Police will receive assistance. And I hope that gets out to everyone so that there's no fear of calling the police. We do not collect any information concerning anyone's status, immigration status. We routinely respond to calls and handle them regardless of what that is. So we try to keep abreast of standards and procedures, legal issues, and innovative topics in modern policing through regular training. We do a lot of training since the Post Commission was established a couple of years ago. It's required a lot more organized training for all police officers in Massachusetts, and it's something that is very helpful to all of us. We exercise rigor in thinking strategically about identifying trends, exploring alternative solutions, and solving problems. So we are really here for the community, and again, we will respond to all calls for service regardless of who it's coming from. So the next thing I'm going to jump into is the legal framework governing local law enforcement and immigration. The Lunn decision from 2017, in Commonwealth versus Lunn, the SJC held that the Massachusetts law does not provide law enforcement the authority to hold individuals solely based on a federal civil immigration detainer. That means we don't hold someone. And I want to give a quick example of what might happen and why this is relevant. We may arrest someone for, say, driving a motor vehicle without a license, and if that person happens to be undocumented, what part of the process of an arrest is bringing them to the police department and going through a booking process. And in that process, we fingerprint all those that are arrested. And when we do that, those fingerprints are electronically submitted to all criminal justice agencies, including ICE. They may call us and let us know that that person is wanted on a civil detainer, but that doesn't affect the way we interact with the person that we have. If someone is eligible for bail and they call and someone comes to pick them up, they will be released forthwith, and we will let ICE know that they were released. In some cases, if they're held for longer, ICE may arrive and take someone into custody from a police department or from a court. So, but the civil detainer does not allow us to hold anybody for any additional length of time, and it's not something we as police officers in Massachusetts can act on. We can't arrest someone on a civil detainer. A judicial warrant is something completely different, where a judge has signed a warrant. We can act on that. If ICE provides only a civil detainer without a judicial warrant, municipal law enforcement in Massachusetts do not have a legal authority to detain an individual. So local officers cannot obstruct or interfere with ICE operations or any federal law enforcement agency. This is supported by several statutes that are listed here. Actions that deliberately impede federal officers could expose officers or departments to legal liability. And that, that goes for all of us as people that see something happen. If your instinct is to get involved, try to take a second, and unless you understand exactly what you're doing, you could be charged in obstructing a federal case or the investigation. I would recommend that people don't take that action. If you're concerned about someone being taken and you don't know if it's, I've heard the word kidnapping, I'm not going to say they're being kidnapped, but you should be a good citizen and record the data, I think. Whether it's in your mind and you write it down with your pencil and say, these are the people that did it, and this is the car that they drove, and report that to your local police department. And we can follow up to determine whether or not that was an actual kidnapping or if it was actually a law enforcement agency taking someone into custody. But throwing yourself in between them is not a good idea and nothing that I would recommend. Massachusetts officers may cooperate with ICE on criminal matters, but have no authority to detain individuals, again, solely on an immigration violation. If someone is wanted by the federal government for some type of a crime, and there's a warrant for their arrest, we're going to work with all law enforcement partners to try and take that person into custody, as we are ordered by that warrant, signed by a judge, to take that person and bring them to court. So it's kind of a slippery slope, and I hope you understand. There may be some questions concerning the different types of detainers or ways in which we can take people into custody. The key points I want to mention here are Massachusetts police officers cannot hold individuals solely based on a civil immigration detainer, and that's the Lund decision, which I discussed earlier. Federal law prohibits interfering with ICE operations. Massachusetts officers are not required to participate in ICE enforcement. Judicially issued federal warrants are treated the same as those from any federal agency. And again, I just mentioned that if it's the FBI or U.S. Marshals, DEA that has a warrant for someone for a legitimate criminal charge, we can take action by arresting that person, but not someone for a civil detainer. Information sharing with ICE is allowed, and at least it must align with public record law. So we can't withhold information we have if as far as an investigation goes, because again, we could be considered obstructing in an investigation. If we know or can have information that's at our disposal provided to ICE, we're not going to say you have 10 days to provide information concerning a public records request. We're going to try and provide it as quickly as possible if it's for an investigation into a criminal event. So I don't know. I guess I'll go over this new statement from May 12th. Many of you may have seen it with the incident from Great Road on May 12th. And these are just some bullets I'd like to provide, that the Acton Police have a duty to respond and to keep the peace and maintain public safety in Acton, no matter who is making the request. In that case, it was ICE that called us from the scene of Great Road. They made a phone call and asked, they said a large crowd was gathering. They were concerned and they asked for assistance. Traffic was being stopped, and we were sent and arrived to just, again, keep the peace and make sure no one was hurt. Our presence on May 12th was strictly to help ensure that the situation remained peaceful and that everyone's rights, including the rights of those who protest, were respected. We recognize immigration enforcement activities have created fear and uncertainty among members of our community, and that this is a deeply emotional and complex issue. We're all learning. I'm, learning like you are. I'm glad, again, to be here to take in the knowledge of the panelists and learn a little more about this. And the reason for that is to be able to provide the best police services we can. I'm very proud of the men and women of our department. They do an outstanding job, and we just need to lead them in the right direction. The Acton Police Department is committed to transparency, open communication, respectful engagement with all members of this community, and I look forward to trying to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Our final panelist is Delita Roche. I do not have you on the flyer. I was able to connect with her only yesterday that we were able to finalize that she was going to be here tonight. She is a proud African immigrant from Cabo Verde, a mother of 3, and a seasoned organizer and leader with deep roots in justice-focused advocacy. She currently serves as the executive director of Neighbor to Neighbor, Massachusetts, where she works to build a future that centers the well-being of working-class communities across the Commonwealth. Delita brings a wealth of experience from her recent work with Renew US, an organization dedicated to building multiracial working-class power through coalition building, policy development, and electoral organizing. Before that, she served as a Massachusetts political director for SEIU 32BJ, where she co-chaired the Driving Families Forward Coalition, which successfully passed the Work and Family Mobility Act, allowing all qualified residents to obtain a driver's license regardless of immigration status. She's also served as field director for the S on 4 Safer Roads campaign, leading the charge to uphold this critical law throughout a state ballot initiative. In January 2024, Delita was appointed to the Massachusetts Board of Education, bringing her organizing perspective and commitment to equity to public education. Tonight, Delita also joins us as a representative of LUCE, a statewide coalition that educates community members about their rights and monitors ICE activity in Massachusetts. LUCE responders observe, verify, and document enforcement actions in our communities. Important, constitutionally protected work that does not involve intervention, but ensures transparency and accountability. Delita work embodies the spirit of collective power, and we are honored to have her here with us. Thank you, Delita, for being here.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. I think the first time I actually came to Acton was to drop off materials for Driving Families Forward to Representative Senna's house. And then the last couple of weeks, I feel like I'm here every other day. Beautiful, beautiful place to be. So today, I am here representing the LUCE Network, the hotline. And sorry, I don't have a PowerPoint, but I was added last minute to the panel. But the LUCE Network hotline, as Sahana already mentioned, is a statewide hotline that was launched in February, right? And it's a coalition of individuals, really in grassroots organization that works on immigration. to really educate community members, right? We have different tracks. We have the track where we do Know Your Rights training, and then we also have the hotline, which is to train verifiers across the state on how to show up to scenes, ICE sightings when they happen, to show up to be able to record, which is your constitutional right. And we want to make sure that those who are being detained are not experiencing violations of their right. And as Chief mentioned, is something that the Luce Hotline also says all the time. You are not there to interfere with ICE arrest. That is not our job. That puts you at risk. It puts us at risk. However, we are there to make sure that people's rights are not being violated. And it is definitely your constitutional right to, one, make sure that your community is safe, right? So when folks call the hotline saying that there are ICE agents just circulating and harassing community members, as a community volunteer, you can absolutely show up and ask questions, right, in the most respectful way, because you want to know what's going on in your community. So that is what the hotline was launched for. However, since it was launched, the need has increased. So we also do, we have been able to assist a lot of families that have been dealing with family separation, from community care, of just being able to connect folks with legal representation, to being able to bring food to families' house, to being able to raise money for those who no longer have the breadwinner at home for them to pay rent. And also recently we started supporting those that are on the inside, right, by adding money. So they can have, food or whatever that they need to buy on the inside while they're waiting to see what happens with their case. And it's, I was sitting here hearing everything, and just like a sadness came upon me, because it's been months, but especially the last 2 weeks, of just like intense, there's a lot of trauma of being on the field. Even here in Acton, when I showed up in Acton a couple of weeks ago, of just a lot of trauma, and seeing how our immigrants are being criminalized. And I remember when I first became the political director, the first piece of legislation I wanted to file and did file was the driver's license, right? Because driving without a license is a criminal offense. Right, and you often hear this narrative of just like, we want the immigrants to do it right. Let me tell you, first of all, the system is working exactly the way it's designed to work, and it's terrible to navigate the system. The other day, I was trying to renew my passport, and I could not find my certificate, my citizenship certificate. Do you know how much it costs to get a copy, just a copy of that? $560. So in order for me to get my passport, I need to find $560. I'm just like, that's the easy stuff. That's the easy stuff. But the system is hard. And as folks have mentioned, it costs a lot of money. And people try to do it the right way, and there's obstacles after obstacles after obstacles. And filing the driver's license was exactly to remove some of those obstacles out of the way, which means like now if you get a traffic stop, you can present your driver's license, and just like us, the rest of folks with status, you can pay a fine if you need to pay a fine, and then keep it going, instead of now being seen as a criminal that under this administration. First of all, anyone who overstays their visa now is considered a criminal, right? I came here as a minor, and I overstayed my visa. Like, technically, if I was under this administration, I would be considered a criminal. So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want me to say, or I'll take questions later, I guess.
No, this is awesome. Thank you so much. On that note, I just want to make an announcement. Couple of our committee members and the Acton Select Board, they are putting together a training on the Luce hotline. I think I'm just saying this for the first time too. I'm going to just read this out. This is going to be on Sunday, May 25th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. right here in this room. And they will teach you how to look for, what to look for, and when an ICE activity is present, how to respond effectively and safely if there are attempts to detain our community members, and opportunities to take action to keep our communities safer. Again, this is going to be on Sunday, May 25th, right here from 6 to 7:30 p.m. This is just done by a few community members who have been trained, and they will kind of train everyone else. Alyssa wants to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that this is sponsored by the Peacemakers Network and Indivisible Acton area. There are flyers if you want to take one or take a picture of it at the back table before you leave. We'd love to see all of you or most of you back here on Sunday at 6 p.m. for a training.
Thank you, Alyssa. With that, we will move on to some of the questions that we have already received online. So bear with us, we might not be able to cover all of the questions, and I see a stack of questions that came from the room here too. So one of the first questions is, I've grouped them, many of the questions we have tried to group Bob and I. So we will take turns in asking, how can residents confirm that someone is an ICE agent and not impersonating law enforcement? What are signs, badges, or identifiers to look for, and what should bystanders to do in those moments? Any one of you can take the question, start the question. Dalida, Iloa, Sarang, or even the chief.
I'll give it a shot.
Sure, go ahead, chief.
So the Acton Police Department has an ID policy. So if we're the Acton Police, if the Acton Police came to your house and you weren't sure if we were the police, you could ask us simply to provide our ID. And we would do that, and it would show you a picture of us and give the name and rank of the person you're dealing with. I don't know that ICE or other law enforcement, federal law enforcement agencies have a policy similar to that. I think it would be a good practice. I would say that the person that's being dealt with, the person that's being taken into custody, has the most authorization for asking that question, whether it be for identification, to a badge, a warrant. The person that is being placed in custody has the right to ask for that. As a bystander, that I would say goes downhill a long way, and it probably doesn't happen, or most bystanders will not be answered with those questions. If you're being involved, if it's you, you can inform someone else to ask that question, but only if it's directed at you. Otherwise, I guess it could be construed by some as being interfering, right? That help?
Yeah.
One thing, if I could add, Chief, sometimes I've received lots of concerns with them having masks covering their faces, and I wonder what can we do if we can make that I wish I could make that illegal in terms of, as a state entity, to say, okay, if you're the federal or the state, you ought to be providing a full face. I mean, given we're not under emergency. It's not like we're under emergency rules under COVID, right? So given that's the case, it's something we're looking into and see what we can do. That's certainly something that ought to be addressed, given that they are public. We are paying their salary at the other day. So they ought to disclose who they are. So I think that's something we need to look at.
If I could just add, just an example. So I represented a father and a son who own a mechanic shop. They were on the news for some time. ICE just came in as regular folks into their mechanic shop and entered their own office without even asking if they had any permission to enter. So they were just like looking like regular people. So they first thought customers are coming in, and then they approached, and then they apprehended. There was no consent to questioning. They were just like puzzled with the fact that they just came in. So do they wear a badge? Most cases they do not. They're in plain clothes. You just think it's just regular person that's just right next to you. So it is scary times.
And if I can add to, the other thing that is happening and we have videos of this because we have verifiers on scene, is that ICE agents are actually refusing to identify themselves
Yes.
to the person that they are detaining, right? And when there's a language barrier, then they just like totally pretend that they don't have to. So they're supposed to, it's not happening. Just like they're supposed to make sure that people's basic human rights are not being violated, that is also not happening. The other thing too is because it's not easy to identify an ICE agent, what is happening, and that is why folks are talking about kidnapping versus arresting, is that there are people who are buying fake ICE badges and invest, and they are actually kidnapping people, or they are asking folks, if you don't want to be deported, you need to pay me something, or they're telling women, you need to give me your body. Yeah, that is happening.
Thank you. Bob, you want to go ahead with the next question?
Okay. Another question. Several people may already be more in the know on this, but given the social media and whatnot, but what has happened in Acton? We want to understand a little better. You've touched on that, and how can we help? So following ICE arrests in Acton just 10 days ago, what do we know about the individuals detained? What happens to them now, and how can community members provide support or advocate for the release and rights? Tough one.
The immigration attorney. So I am representing one of the individuals, or maybe two, but I could just tell you that, so ICE, again, their job is to detain, remove. They start with Burlington office. So the folks that are detained, or apprehended, I should say, in Massachusetts are brought to their Burlington office, the enforcement removal office that's in Burlington at 1000 District Avenue. They're there for like the booking part. So they get fingerprinted, they get their pictures taken. There are times that if we're communicated, if we have access to the person, the individual that's being brought under custody, sometimes we can talk to the officer and negotiate and say, hey, this is someone who actually happens to have a pending immigration case, a green card, his wife is a citizen, or you shouldn't take him in, it's gonna be a waste of resources. I was actually able to do that to one recently. But 98% are being brought to Plymouth. And because Plymouth is a sheriff-governed facility, also holds criminals, right? And I'm sorry for saying that like that, but folks that are accused or have committed crime. And I say this because most of the folks that are being detained now, as you can see, they don't have a criminal record. And so they're brought to Plymouth, and I had this young guy call me from Plymouth. He was in tears. He's like, I am scared. I'm very scared here. And I said, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. So what's probably for the others, they're probably in Plymouth, and because they don't have enough space, right? Because of space issues, they're being transferred. And most of the folks that I represent in Plymouth are being transferred to either Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Ohio. So they're all over. And sometimes I call it, like bar hopping, detention hopping. They go to one place, then all of a sudden you think they're still there, and then all of a sudden, nope, just being transferred to another facility. So that's most likely what's happening with them.
Important for you to mention too that is not a coincidence that they've been shipped to Louisiana, places like Louisiana,
Right,
right?
can get them
It's because the judge are a lot stricter over there, and they can get them the removal out the country a lot quicker.
Yeah, good point.
It's not a coincidence.
And, yeah, different circuits and also higher bonds.
Yep.
So like in Massachusetts, I usually get bonds between 1,500, the highest maybe 7,000. I just got one in Texas, the guy with no criminal record, citizen children, has been here over 10 years, $15,000 was the bond. And I was just like, I was perplexed, but I was happy at the same time because this judge was like, I don't like the fact that he was working all these years without work authorization. I said, Your Honor, but he will. This is now the time where he's going to be able to apply for the, relief and be able to get a work authorization. But thankfully, he was filing his taxes with the ITIN number, and I know that's one of the questions, which allows folks to, and that's, most of my clients have that, where they declare their taxes, with their income, and pay taxes too, which is interesting.
I just want to share with folks, since you're asking specifically how you can help the men who were apprehended here in Acton on May 10th. They have been sent to Louisiana and Virginia and are in prison. They were separated. The 3 men are father and sons. They've been here since 2017 and 2019. So if you'd like to help, you can contact their Senator, Mike Barrett, and insist that he do everything that he can to ensure their timely release. There's also a GoFundMe that's been organized by the girlfriend of one of the men. Her name is Katie, so you can find that on GoFundMe.
If I can add one thing, I'll try and make it quick. We've seen a huge growth in what some of us are calling the prison industrial complex around immigration. The people who run a lot of these immigration detention centers are private corporations. They're all getting profits off of this, turning some of that around to lobby to get more profits. This congressional budget bill that they're debating right now would increase detention bed space to 125,000 a night. That's bigger than the entire federal prison system. No, 125,000 people a night.
Yeah. Can you turn on the microphone?
I was about to say, if you calculate the money, some of us were calculating how much they're making from the beds. It's in the thousands, sometimes per night, because they're doing mass detention. You can't have, the thing about it is you can't have, without mass detention, the prisons are not, they're not working. And which is why the dignity, not deportation bill is extremely important. And I know there's a lot of concerns around, well, if immigrants are not able to stay at Plymouth, then they're gonna be sent off to other states or on a quickness. The average right now is less than 24 hours, our immigrants are being sent to Louisiana. So if they don't have the beds, they can't do mass detention.
Well, thank you. So the next question is on legal rights during ICE encounters. So what are the legal rights of individuals during an ICE interaction? At home, in a car, or on the street? Can someone refuse to open their door or answer questions? What can bystanders legally do, especially when it comes to filming or witnessing ICE activity? I have to add that there have been questions around is it legal for ICE to break open car windows? So, yeah, turn the microphone on. Yeah, this is a question for all of you guys, if you can, please. Thank you. I'll let one of you guys take this question.
No, go ahead.
All right. It's been a long time since I've done a Know Your Rights presentation. The rights are essentially the same. I mean, unless they have an actual judicial warrant, then no, they can't come into your home. 2 problems with that. One is that what ICE does, they have these internal documents that they call warrants. It's really just from a supervisor to a lower officer. But they come to your door and they say, no, I've got a warrant, so people open their door. The other thing we're seeing, though, in recent months, like with car windows, is we have heard of them just busting people's doors down without any kind of warrant or anything like that. So my advice is always, know your rights, protect your rights. Look, a know your rights presentation is a long presentation. We can't do the whole thing here today. Go to a know your rights presentations. There are all over the place now. It's what so many people are doing right now. It's not 100% protection, but A, it's better than nothing, and B, it might give you some help when it comes to the court system.
Great, no, that's just what I remember in law school, one of the professors said, your house is your castle. You really do have more protections at your home. Everyone does, every citizen. But the car situation, even for immigration attorneys, has become, even criminal attorneys, I've talked to them, is like when or how can or do they cross the line, right? Because you're driving, police will stop you because you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing or you're speeding. But why would they stop someone who's not speeding but looks like an immigrant, right? Are they racial profiling, saying, well, this one looks like maybe he doesn't have status. So, but they have to have that reasonable suspicion, right? Of, they have to have like some sort of facts that makes them think, okay, that's the person. So I don't know if anyone followed the Lucas Amanal case. So I represented that case, and he left home and walked to his car. It was not even a 30-second drive. And ICE was behind him. He stops the car, and ICE officer comes up to him and says, what is your status? And he goes right into that, and he's like, oh, I'm an overstay, and he's obviously he wasn't my client, so he didn't know his constitutional rights. And when I found out he was opening his mouth, and I was like, why did you say all that to him? That's new. And then he's like, you look like this, I can't remember the guy's name. It was a different name. He said, you look like this person we're looking for. And Lucas said, oh, he's like, and he showed him a picture. So technically he wasn't after Lucas, but because Luca had already shared that he was an overstay, he was snatched. And it was so sad because he has a 3-year-old daughter. The wife was pregnant at the time. And when I came into the picture, I said, Lucas, if you had just kept your mouth open, that's where it goes, the right to remain silent, right? You don't have to share anything. You don't have to share about, oh, I'm an overstay. And the other is, and if anything, if you guys can remember anything about rights and to share is, do not give officers your passport, ever. I mean, don't volunteer in giving a passport. I should say that. I have to be careful how I say this. Because if someone who doesn't know they have a removal order, right? Because they didn't go to a hearing or they didn't know they had a hearing, because that's very common as well, and they're giving their passport to the office, that's a very, it's actually the quickest way for them to remove someone. So just wanted to share about that story.
I'll add just a couple things here. One, there was a question about can bystanders record? Again, I'm gonna say that's your constitutional right. Like, you can absolutely record. Just don't intervene with any activities. But you can record. So if you feel like that's the right thing to do in that moment, please do it. Just make sure that you don't interfere with any of ICE activities. The other thing too is to mention, and I often tell people this, it's good to teach other people their rights. It's good for folks to know your rights, but always think, what is your goal in that moment? Is it to stay alive? Because your rights will be violated under this administration. It is being violated. Folks' rights are being violated. So sometimes, if your goal in that moment is to stay alive, you're gonna know that your rights are being violated, and you're gonna let it happen until you connect with a lawyer, right? So also, I know sometimes we're trying to be helpful as bystanders, just also take note of what's happening and don't push folks too hard, because then their lives can be at risk. Because remember, when they leave that wherever location, we don't know what's happening in those cars, in those vans. I've heard horror stories lately. So also, it's good, yes, know your rights. And I think in this moment, we need to internalize the fact that people's rights are being violated and will continue to be violated.
Okay. Thank you. We are not going to be able to get to everything that has been submitted. We've got a pile here, but I did want to take a few if we can. And we have others that's been pre-submitted. This one is, flights are leaving from Hanscom, taking detainers elsewhere. That's the knowledge at least this person has. Could something be done with Massport to prevent such flights? Is that even in the realm of possibility? I don't know if any of you have any insight on that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question again?
The question was, flights are leaving from Hanscom, taking detainers elsewhere. Could something be done with Massport, the owner of Hanscom Field, or for Logan for that matter, to prevent such flights? Is there some restriction or legal restriction on that, or is this just not any?
In terms of getting people removed fast because Massport is cooperating, is that the question?
No, well, the way I understood it, which may be incorrect, I don't know who asked it, but is there like a Massachusetts law or something? Is there already a regulation at Massport that you need due process of some kind to delay the flight? I mean, when
Delay a flight.
yeah, when you see these judicial orders being violated, what if it happens here in Massachusetts? No, that may be beyond. Yeah,
I would
thought it
say,
might.
yeah, I was thinking like, I had a situation, when you said Massport, I was thinking flights. So years ago, I had to file habeas case, so federal court, not immigration court, where I had to request, ICE wasn't following the orders, so they were trying to remove this individual. He was at the airport, and I was very timely filed a habeas, and the judge ordered that he be sent back. So like, maybe somewhat to that question, but not really.
Not really. That's
Something
okay. We'll go to the
interesting to
next
share.
With the doctor from
Right.
Brown University,
Yeah.
and they had the order that she could stay,
Yeah.
but they said that she was already overseas, which was intentional.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to say this, but I think folks should watch the smaller airports, the regional airports.
Yes.
Because that is, that will be started using to get immigrants out as quick as possible. I'll say that for now.
Thank you.
So let's go back to the local law enforcement and ICE. Again, this probably is to Chief Jim Cogan. What is Acton Police Department's policy and cooperation with ICE? I know you have already touched on this. If your officers witness ICE violating rights or damaging property, are they allowed or required to intervene?
I would say they're not going to intervene. If it's typically in what we've had here in Acton over the last few weeks is ICE coming to town and making a call to the police department prior to any enforcement action. And they let us know that they're going to be in a specific area of town. It's very general. I think the last report we had was Great Road, in the area of Great Road. They said that they were working on an operation. They provided a contact number, and that was it. So we're aware that they're going to be in town typically when they do come to town, and that's a courtesy. There's nothing that says that has to be done, but generally for all of our federal law enforcement partners, that's what occurs. They don't want there to be any conflict, or they want to deconflict any type of incident where we have two law enforcement agencies going to something unknown that the other agency is going to be there. So we're aware of that they're there. As far as the tactics go in breaking windows, it's something that's done by local law enforcement very, very rarely. And it's hard to even come up with a reason why, but if someone is in a car and refuses to get out, say that we have a warrant for their arrest for, say, a serious charge, they're not going to leave. We will make every effort possible to de-escalate, to try and talk them into opening a door or find a way into the vehicle. But if it comes to it, there may be a time when we will break a window in order to get in and get the person out. We only have so much time. Again, we'll give as much time as we can, whatever's thought to be reasonable at the time. But there may be damage done to a vehicle or a home if we have proper justification and warrants to be able to justify that.
Going back to the pre-submitted ones, what is the current status of the Safe Communities Act and the Immigrant Legal Defense Act in the Massachusetts legislature? How can residents in towns advocate for these protections? I think that's more you, Dan.
Yeah, so I just did a Google search here to make sure I have the right committee, but it's at the Joint Committee of Public Safety and Homeland Security. So they're going to give us a notice of when can we come and testify, and so the public can come and speak in favor or in opposition to a bill. And so that day will be announced by the committee. And once it's heard, the committee would then decide whether to report it out favorably or send to study, which ultimately that kind of kills the bill. So that's when we need to be be there advocating. I think we can also testify remote, given those some of the rules that we did during COVID that now is also allowed. So there's options for that. So that you just have to check in with the committee to be able to testify either in person or remote. And I look, Stella is saying something. Go ahead, Stella. Lobby Day. May 28th. That's next Wednesday, May 28th, next Wednesday. Okay, thank you, Stella.
May 28th, next Wednesday, is the Massachusetts Lobby Day, so be there to talk to your legislators.
If I can add one thing to that. I have a problem here in Massachusetts, which is that I do the federal policy work. All of our delegation, I don't really need to advocate with our delegation to do anything. I feel like you've got the same problem here locally. So the important thing really, though, is for you who have, family and friends in other districts, get them to be calling their legislators and pushing their legislators. And to be honest, ask them to see what they can do to push the speaker. I think that's really important because we've seen a lot of time, or just leadership in general. To be honest, I've seen a lot of times. For example, the Safe Communities Act has passed out of committee multiple times and has just never made it to the floor for a vote. And so I really think, and I hope I'm not upsetting Rep. Senate for this.
No.
But
I'm
really
enjoying
think,
this.
I really think that, nothing's going to move without leadership as well. So it's not just your own legislators, but asking them to be champions on these things with leadership.
Yeah, it's when the Work and Family Mobility Act passed, it was a lot of things that was moving not only in the building, but with the lobbying effort. So I think we just have to be organized and spending that time and resource and efforts in a way that moves us to act. I actually did have a meeting with the speaker where I asked, could you please bring this bill up? Certainly it's something, I'm not sure if we have the vote. So certainly, those areas in which, we need to mobilize and try to get more members to co-sponsor the bill. But I think we just have to work. I've seen many bills get through and sometimes it's a public effort that is working almost in symphony with many other reasons, and I think right now it really escalates to one of the most important bill that we could pass and at least send a message to where we are. So I'm really hopeful that we can try to act. So really just continue the work.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So the next question is preparing at-risk families. I'm going to combine a couple of questions from the floor and what we had online. What should families do now before a raid or a detention happens to protect their children and themselves? Are there specific legal documents or steps that ensure kids are not taken by the state or lost in the system? And in the same thing, I'm just going to add this one other thing that came from the floor. Ilowa, you had a statistic that said 55% of arrested do not have legal representation. What happens to them?
Could you put the slide up?
There is no slide.
Slide.
Yeah, do
Yeah,
you want me to
so,
put it up? Okay.
yeah, that would be great. And I do have to mention my slide, if anyone wants it. I have Know Your Rights material there too. My email is my first name, Eloa, and then at celadonlaw.com. So if you want my email, and I can share or if you want it to share. But,
Which was that slide, do you know, Ilowa?
yeah.
There's some numbers.
Yeah, I have some numbers there. So the question is, what happens with people that are pro se and or not
The
representative?
next one.
Is that the question?
You said 55% weren't represented.
Yes.
And what happens to them?
It's unfortunate. So what the Trump administration has directed, I'll give you an example with the courts, immigration courts, is that if folks are filing asylum applications that are incomplete, judges now have the authority to pre-termit. So judges can cancel their asylum application and just remove them. So that's scary, right? Because you're like, okay, that person doesn't have an attorney, they're on the wait list at a nonprofit. Private attorneys are, including myself, we do a lot of low bono cases, but you get to a point where it's hard to have everyone on either pro bono, low bono. So there's no, especially Massachusetts, there is no right to counsel like in criminal court. If you are indigent, you get public counsel, you get, you pay a fee, but that's not the case. You have to advocate for yourself. Thankfully, we have wonderful organizations, especially in the Boston area, like Pear Clinic, that are there to the Irish, what's the Irish one? Ryan, which is wonderful. So my recommendation is, have a list of nonprofit organizations, have a list of private attorneys around the area. And I get calls from folks, and that was one of the questions, what can people do for these people? Get in touch with your legislators, please. That makes a difference, and raise legal funding with these smaller nonprofits. There's the Framingham, it's the Casa do Trabalhador, which they work with labor issues, but they also help people find private attorneys so that they can be represented in court. But
And to address the question about families, the last time Trump was in office, a few organizations got together and put together a family preparedness packet exactly for this, to worry about what happens to the kids if a parent gets picked up or detained. And it's pretty basic stuff, I mean, it's things you need just simply to pick a kid up from school, for example. But these are out there. I know we've got them on our website. I don't know if you guys have it as well, probably. Okay.
I keep forgetting the mic. We're like going to different places when requested and working with ACLU. We hosted one in Worcester not too long ago, just for families to come. And you must have your, plan and documents signed, pick whoever, and it's preferably for you to have someone who, has status in the United States because you don't want to expose family members without status, and you don't want your children probably ending up in the system, as was said in DCF or other systems. So that's very, very important. And yeah, we have been partnering up with ACLU to do it, and Mira has it, on as well. So reach out to your nonprofit organizations in your communities. They will most definitely support.
I do want to point out state planning attorneys too. They can also help because they can do even family law attorneys, guardianships. They can do temporary guardianships. They can do caregiver authorizations. So it depends what the family's looking for, right? They're like, I just want someone to take care of my kids while I'm in detention, because if I'm removed, I want my kids home with me, back home with me. So I'd also recommend, in terms of preparedness, for them to have an attorney number that they trust, someone that you trust, that they can call right away, access to their finances. That's a big one I get. How do I get access to my husband, my friend who's detained? How do I get access to his bank account to pay the attorney fees? So all that, you just kind of prepare yourself. I feel like we're living in such a, it's like we have to plan for all this stuff if you get detained, but that's our reality.
Thank you. We are running out of a bit of time, but this is a topic we haven't touched on yet. In light of recent developments, how real do any of you feel is the threat to birthright citizenship under executive orders or court rulings? What's the legal underpinning of that?
Well, your policy.
Oh my God, a year ago, no one would have thought this was even possible.
Right, it's crazy.
I will say that there was when was the hearing? Was that Monday? Was the Supreme Court hearing? I
So,
forget.
yeah,
Oh
Monday.
my Lord, time is just. I am not an expert on Supreme Court deliberations, but I think from what I've seen, it sounds like, first off, I hope people understand that the hearing that the Supreme Court had on Monday was a procedural issue. It wasn't about the substance of the case. But if you kind of read between the lines of what the justices said, it doesn't sound like they're very receptive to the administration's arguments on the substance. I'm not going to say that means they're going to vote against it. But that's the most I can give you right now as far as the tea leaves.
Yeah, and then they're trying, just for those that are maybe unfamiliar what they're trying to do. So basically, if you have at least one parent with no status, or if you're here in like a temporary stay, so like students that are here, people that are on temporary work visas. If you have a child, then your child is not to be considered a U.S. citizen. So that's what the issues are.
Thank you, guys. We are kind of over time right now, so we will wrap up. We tried our best to kind of bundle all the questions. There were quite a few questions, so thank you all for your patience. But before we wrap up, thought it'll be great to just go around the table for closing remarks from each one of you. Maybe we can start from Dalida and come all the way down here.
Closing remarks.
The pressure's on. Closing remarks. These are scary times, right? Not only for immigrants without status, but for folks who are, showing up for our communities, right? Like, people are receiving death threats, and as the saying goes, if we don't, step up for our neighbors right now, next they can come for you, right? And people are being dehumanized, right? And what we're saying is, at least, the work that I do every day, it's about people's humanity, right? It's about due process. It's about families. I can't even begin to tell you some of what I've seen on the ground, like hugging minors who are crying for their family members. It's heartbreaking. So this is the moment that we all need to rise up and meet the moment. So I hope, I hope you can get involved, whatever you can do, whether it's volunteering, like Luce Hotline, we have operators, we have verifiers, whether it's raising funds to support the families. Please get involved because we need everyone if we're going to survive the next 4 years, if we're going to have, a little bit of dignity left after this administration.
Thank you. The Acton Police Department recognizes what's happening here and the unrest and the fear and the uncertainty among the citizens within our town. We are here, again, to protect and serve the members of our community, whoever they are, documented, undocumented. We are not looking to help to remove anyone from our town. And I just want to relay that if there's someone that needs help, please reach out to us and we'll do whatever we can to provide any assistance we can to any individual, regardless of any status.
Kind of along with what you were saying, Dalida, there are things that people can do right now to support other members of your community. Sometimes it's, just making sure people have access, I made a mess, access to the red cards, these Know Your Rights cards. Maybe it's, for instance, I was so excited the other day, I walked into a restaurant next to my home and they had that flyer on the door as you walked in. If you own a business, put these flyers up, get these red cards out. Make sure that just people know where they can get help. And just more than anything else, this administration doesn't believe in humanity. Just remember I don't care if they're immigrants or not, just try and treat everyone as a human.
Wanted to share Maya Angelou's one of my favorite quotes. The truth is, no one of us can be free until everybody's free. So my final remarks is, it starts at the dinner table. Start with your families, with your grandchildren, with your brothers, your siblings, because, some are misinformed and don't know what we do as immigrants. I say myself as an immigrant because my parents were immigrants in Brazil. They're from Chile. I was born in Brazil and grew up here. So I've seen, and over the years, that, our nation here, which the U.S. is my country, is that we all contribute, as you know, billions of taxpayers, the money that we're contributing, and sometimes all they're getting is stuff in the news, that immigrants are bad, immigrants are criminals, and that's not. And there's a statistic, I don't remember the name, but every 4 physicians in the U.S., 1 is foreign-born. So we're not only helping in the crops and strawberry picking, but we're also taking care of our loved ones, helping finding cure. So starts at the dinner table. Thank you.
I am honored to be one of the panelists here tonight. I want to say thank you to everyone for coming. I think we're certainly living in dark times when it comes to immigrant community. But I like to see myself as a citizen of the world and what we can do to make this world a better place, and for not only for us but also for the next generation. And we can't be silenced in terms of we can't just let this go by and not do what we think is the right thing to do. And certainly, I'm really just honored to be here representing a community that cares so deeply about this issue, that is so aligned with my views in terms of philosophy and what we care about in this country. So I just really want to say thank you for everyone for showing up and really for being here. And I'm honored to be your state representative and try to be a small voice in the House, but certainly a voice that can be heard throughout many people across the aisle, if I may say, because I know we have had, conservative administration that looked at as an immigrant as also a beacon of hope, and right now it's really not the case. But I really want to also thank Sahana and Bob Sahana for putting this together. Sahana, really, thank you.
Well, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for being here today, and such an overwhelming response, so many questions. I'm so sorry we couldn't get to all of the questions, but I hope a few that we really thought was pressing got answered, and we kind of have a direction on how to address when we see something wrong happening in the community. And huge thanks to the panelists. Thank you for all of your expertise. Thank you to Representative Sana. He was the one who connected me to Ilowa, to Sarang, and to the chief and the leader. Thanks to all of you for being here and for making this forum happen. Huge thanks to my committee. They have been hearing about this in every meeting. And I know that Bob wanted to say something too, so before we close, so thanks, guys. Thank you.
No, honestly, I think everybody said it. Really, this is just terrific. The response is fantastic, and we have a lot more work to do. The work is beginning, but we're up to it. This is Massachusetts. This is Acton.
Just one last thing. I know. Just a last thing. Don't forget the training right here in this room coming up on the date.
The 28th.
The 28th.